don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
One of the things is when you think about who you are, I'm sure a lot of people are really interested in this, your level of activism. You know, what inspired you to take up that fight? We understand the educational piece, we saw that, but you know, you're one of the leading figures in Black activism these days. What inspired you to do that?
You know, I really think activism, or just, you know, if you want to even call it revolutionary behavior, sometimes it just runs in your blood. Sometimes you just can't tolerate somebody else's BS. You're not meant to really fit in the box. And so what I do is really what I feel like every Black person should be doing this, right? It feels that natural. It doesn't feel like I'm doing something different. But I go back to when I was a kid, and I remember I used to argue with my mother about stuff, you know, and if I felt like something was unjust or unfair, I couldn't help it. I had to say something, you know, even if I knew I was going to get smacked, you know, I'd keep going. And my mother was like, she used to say, boy, your mouth is either going to make you great or get you killed. I'm curious to see which one. And, you know, because I'd argue, you know, you argue with your mama and she gets mad because you start winning the argument. So we start having, you know, so the activism part is like, I don't understand how a Black person could live in America and not be an activist and not feel outraged and like it was necessary to kind of deal with some of the nonsense that we see sometimes from our own people. And so so a lot of this of what I do now, it really started, actually, I think I was about 24, 25 years old. And it was right in the middle of what some of y'all might remember this. It was the Republican Revolution. And the Republicans had just kind of taken over Congress, you know, with this whole contract with America and everything else. And they were saying a lot of stuff that was real racist. You know, this was right around the time Biden passed that crime bill. And I remember being really furious about what I was seeing. And that was when you started noticing all the Black men going away to prison and everything on little tiny dope charges or whatever. And I remember reading an article from this racist guy, the Republican. And at that time, I thought there was a clear line, like Democrat good, Republican bad, Democrats okay, Republicans are racist. Then over time, I learned it's a lot more complex than that. All of it's white supremacy at the end of the day. It's just different versions of the same thing. But I read this article. And I was furious. I'm walking across campus. I'm so mad. And I happened to bump into the president of our campus, University of Kentucky. And I said, how can somebody write this? I said, can you believe what he's saying? Like, he's talking about Black people on welfare. And you know what he said? He said, you should write a rebuttal. And I said, you know, I think I will. You know, and I had never really been a writer before. I mean, I was a kid who failed English class over and over again. And so I went down to the journalism building. And I bumped into a guy who literally said, his name was Alex DeGrand, and Alex basically said, oh, the editor's office is that way. And I have a column on Monday mornings. Tell him you can have my space because I don't even want to write a column. So I went to the editor, who's this Republican who might be called one of those racists. He's real right wing, but he was a cool dude. And his name was Matt Felice. And so Matt basically let me write a column in response, right? So I wrote this column. It goes out. And the whole campus is pissed. Like, all the white kids are mad as hell, cussing me out, writing angry letters or whatever. But he loved it, right? Because everybody's reading the paper. So he gave me the Monday morning spot in the campus paper. And so each week I would just start writing. It was like I was possessed. Like something would just come out and it would just flow out, almost like an artist making a song. And I would put it out. And everybody on campus would read it, and it was like it created like a big uproar on campus, like to the point where I was really getting death threats and everything else. And also at that time, I did not know that I had actually developed an ability to communicate myself through writing pretty effectively. Not because I knew grammar. I knew nothing about grammar. I wouldn't know, you know, a dangling participle from a piece of chicken, you know. But what happened was I used to keep a journal, and I would document things as I saw things, and it gave me the ability to take an idea and put it on paper. So I would write these articles and somehow they would just turn out good. People would just read them. So, and everybody on the campus, they would see me and I would meet them and they always knew who I was. They'd either be like, yeah, it's good to meet you. Or they'd be like, yeah, I know who you are. Right. And the majority of the campus hated me because it was a bunch of racist white people. And then it came to a head when we had there was a black girl who did something that was really rare. She now this right-wing editor, he loved putting me in the paper because everybody would read the paper, but he didn't like my political views, but he did defend my right to freedom of speech, which I appreciated. And so most of the letters he would publish were very negative. You're stupid and a black woman wrote a note to the paper and it got published and her name was Tanya something. And she was one of the few people who supported me. And she said, you have no idea what it feels like to be black on this campus. And the next day she was walking to class and a white guy, I guess, read what she wrote and didn't like it. So these two white guys cornered her on the way into the building and put a knife to her throat. And they said, if you don't like your life on this campus, we can end it for you. And so she's mortified. She's like, she was so scared. She actually left campus that semester, dropped out of school, went home, everything. So she goes to the administration to tell the administration of the University of Kentucky, like what was going on and what they did. And the problem was that week, she didn't understand the politics. That week, Kentucky was playing in the Final Four. So they didn't want the negative publicity. So they tried to get her to like keep it quiet. And so, but she didn't keep it quiet. She went to the Black Student Union. She went to her people and she told us what happened. And so we went crazy. We had a big, month-long protest and everything else to really protest the conditions on the entire campus. And it was a really interesting experience just to kind of see, what that experience looks like and how you can know the difference between people that are really ride or die for an idea versus people who just do a lot of talking and don't follow up. And I also learned a lot about the strength and the weakness of the black man. I saw some really strong brothers who really, did what they were supposed to do. And then I saw some just weak men and some women who I felt were very disappointed by the weakness of the men. Like one day, we would go every day in front of the main administration building and we would do a silent protest. So we had our signs up, and they were like, why are these black people sitting here silent? Well, in the beginning, when it was kind of like a popular thing, a lot of the, white people, everybody wanted to be a part of it, right? We had all these allies, right? Or whatever. But then over time, people just didn't, they can't keep it up. Like they can start strong, but don't keep the momentum up. But one day it was raining and around the building, it would get really windy. But I was like, okay, you know what? I'm one of the voices of this thing. So I'm going to make sure I show up every day. So I showed up and on that rainy, windy day, there were no black men out there. Not one black man came out there with me. And there were 3 black women. And I remember going in and I was young at this time. I was just figuring certain things out. And I just went in and I just cussed out the whole Black Student Union. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is unbelievable. These women out here messing up their perms and shit. And y'all punk ass Negroes can't even come out here and do what you say you're going to do. You're supposed to take the lead. These are things I was figuring out. So anyway, another thing I learned about in terms of the work that we have to do is I remember that we asked the basketball players, practically begged them to join our cause, right? To help us. And because we were like, look, you guys have the biggest voice on campus. You guys are world famous. It would be great if you just express some level of support for what we're doing. Right. And none of them did. All of them were basically waiting to be fed, by the NBA, or they were well taken care of by the campus. And there was one guy named Nazir Muhammad who went on to the NBA who actually did follow through. Right. But the other players were just like, I remember a guy named Antoine Walker. You might know him because he actually went to the NBA and blew through $100 million. Well, that's because the guy was stupid. He was just a dumb. We knew he was stupid back then. And later on, I was like, oh, there he goes, being stupid again, blowing through $110 million. So just the trajectory of that experience was kind of where it all kind of set off. And even back then, I told them, when I was leaving, I said, I know you guys are happy to see me go, but I promise you, in 7 years, you're going to see me again, except this time I'm going to do the exact same thing on a national level. And I'll be damned if 7 years later, that wasn't when I did my first national TV interview. And the rest, the rest is the rest. So thank you for letting me get that out. I really don't tell that story very often.